The first hammer blow of dawn rippled through the mirror-still surface of Lake Aurora, as the hush of early morning greeted the uninvited assembly. It began with the blaring bass that shattered the fragile peace of my lakefront retreat, a space I'd fought tooth and nail to protect from the kind of entitled intrusions that plague sleepy suburban oases. Karen, with her stern brow and embroidered polo bearing the HOA crest, swaggered across my dock at twilight, dragging behind her a caravan of speakers and neon lights that painted the shoreline in garish hues. The gravel crunch under her high heels sounded like a taunt against my solemn rows of wildflowers carefully cultivated to attract monarch butterflies. Words bounced off the distant hills as her laughter cut through the reeds. "Hope you don't mind a little fun," before the first offending note boomed. I documented every permit denial she'd glued herself to in meetings, every proof of violation left unresolved by my county board. And now she'd stomped in armed with DJs and drunks to stake a claim on my sanctuary. My heart pounded with indignation as the first track slammed, sending waves pulsing into the lily pads where ducks once glided at dawn. Then came the moment of truth. With the city clerk's certified letter in my hand, I marched down to the breaker box she'd insisted I share, flicking the switch with deliberate calm. Electricity died in a fizz of fluorescent bulbs, and the speakers went silent. The stunned crowd faltered. Karen's flush widened into panic as her precious party flickered into blackness. She stormed toward me, spittle trembling at her lips. "You can't do that," she shrieked. I held up the revoked permit, its red stamp sharp against the off-white paper. "By the law you can't," I said evenly. But fury unhinged her composure. She lunged at me, fingers scrabbling for my collar, only to be halted by the weight of her own rage. The revelers recoiled as Karen's shriek turned into a strangled gasp. My neighbor Lynn, unexpectedly present despite her usual early bedtime, stepped between us. Lynn's eyes flashed recognition of my long-fought campaign against unauthorized use, and she produced her own copy of the enforcement order, handed to me by the county last month. At that moment the story shifted. The music's silence rang louder than any bass drop. Karen's allies, drunk on entitlement, glanced nervously at their phones as live-stream comments piled up. Lakegate trending within minutes. The auxiliary twist came from an unlikely corner. The HOA's vice president, Cliff Matthews, arrived just in time to witness Karen's meltdown. He'd long harbored ambitions beyond flipping pages of bylaws, and in that crucible he saw his path. Cliff announced he was siding with me, presenting audio recordings of Karen's clandestine approvals of other prohibited gatherings, evidence she'd thought buried. The stunned hush gave way to murmurs of betrayal. Karen's knuckles whitened on the rail. The wooden sign behind her, hastily erected, caught a stray flashlight beam. Permits revoked. Justice had been broadcast live to thousands. As she sank to her knees, her face a mask of humiliation and rage, I felt the weight of every sleepless night spent documenting her infractions lift from my shoulders. Dawn light glinted on the water, pure and unpolluted by base or bravado. In that moment, her empire of entitlement collapsed on its own foundation of lies. The ripple of applause rose from the crowd, as residents and partygoers alike cheered the rightful restoration of order. And in the quiet aftermath, I spoke into the still-open livestream. "Tell me what you think was right or wrong here. Share if you'd have done the same." The sun had fully emerged now, dripping liquid gold across the water as party remnants lay scattered like the casualties of Karen's ambition. Chairs overturned, empty cups bobbing in the shallows, and half-deflated balloons clinging to broken strings spoke of an uproar quelled too soon. I surveyed the scene with a sense of hard-won triumph, but also a pang of unease. Victories in suburbia are often only the prelude to another battle. Yet today I would savor this one. An hour later, the county enforcement officer trudged up the dock, clip-on badge gleaming and official concerns etched in his furrowed brow. He nodded curtly at me, his boots crunching over the gravel. "I've processed the filings. Karen Matthews is subject to a substantial fine for the unauthorized event and code violations. You'll receive the notice in 7 to 10 business days." Relief rippled through me. The paperwork might take time, but the outcome was no longer in question. As he departed, I caught a glimpse of Karen perched on her inflatable flamingo float, her glossy facade now deflated beneath a sheen of humiliation. She shrank at the sight of the officer, her indignation swallowed by the weight of official censure. The gathering crowd of neighbors, initially drawn by curiosity, then drawn into the live stream, no lingered, exchanging rehearsed smiles and half-whispered congratulations. I spotted Lynn giving me a thumbs up. Her presence had been my unexpected anchor, proving this wasn't merely a showdown of two obstinate souls but a collective demand for fairness. She sidled up beside me, voice low yet unwavering. "You handled that perfectly. You didn't just cut power, you cut through her excuses." I nodded, recalling every hour spent poring over county bylaws, every hearing where Karen had twisted words to suit her vendettas. As neighbors approached asking how they could help with cleanup, I realized the conflict had forged an unlikely camaraderie. Even Cliff Matthews, once complicit, now stood at a respectful distance, shock and remorse etched into his features as he gathered discarded streamers. Over the next few days, the ripple effects spread deeper. Social media feeds buzzed with the hashtag #LakeGateReckoning, with local journalists picking up the story. A columnist in the county paper called it a cautionary tale of entitlement unchecked. Viewers dissected Karen's meltdown, replayed in looped GIFs. Some empathized with her rage, but most celebrated the restoration of order. Comments poured in. "He did the right thing. I wish my HOA president had spine like his. Viva la power cut." Even her critics acknowledged the poetic justice of a wooden sign speaking louder than any loudspeaker. In the following HOA board meeting, the attendance was unprecedented. Known for a skeletal quorum and perfunctory agenda, that meeting swelled to standing room only. Residents, emboldened by the spectacle at my dock, came with petitions and testimonies about other overreaches, unauthorized landscaping mandates, fines for holiday decorations, demands for uniform shrub heights. The board president, flushed and defensive, attempted to regain control, but found his gavel rattling in his hand as speakers rose one after another. Lynn joined me in the crowd, paper in hand, ready to demand transparent enforcement protocols. Cliff Matthews, seated sheepishly in the back, wore a name tag that read Observer, but carried the weight of a man who'd seen his own hypocrisy laid bare. When the president tried to mute the proceedings, a motion sponsored by an unlikely coalition from retirees to young families passed overwhelmingly. A vote of no confidence in Karen's leadership, and an external review of all permit denials over the past year. Murmurs of "about time," and finally words seldom heard in HOA chambers filled the room. Karen sat at the center table, her shoulders slumped, her lips parted in a silence that spoke louder than any protest. By the meeting's close, she had been stripped of her duties, her reign of micromanagement ended. In the days that followed, county workers arrived to dismantle the hastily erected sign at my dock. I expected to miss its defiant presence. Instead, I found solace in the lake itself, the undisturbed expanse reflecting a sky unmarred by neon lights or loudspeakers. Restoration crews mended broken planks and hauled away trash. At twilight, I sat on the repaired dock, legs dangling above the clear water, and let the distant chorus of frogs serenade a victory well warranted. A week later, an envelope arrived in my mailbox, official and unadorned. Inside lay the final ruling. Karen Matthews would pay fines amounting to thousands of dollars and face community service stipulations. Her name would be listed in the official minutes as removed from her HOA post. As I held the notice, I felt the familiar adrenaline of vindication, but tempered now by the knowledge that justice had a delicate Balancian equilibrium maintained only by vigilance and collective will. That evening, I broadcast a short video to the hashtag that had amplified our stand. Holding the notice aloft, I spoke directly to the camera. It wasn't just about shutting down one loud party. It was about standing up when rules aren't applied equally. It was about holding power accountably no matter how polished or privileged the person wielding it may be. So I ask you, what would you have done in my place? Was cutting the power too extreme or completely justified? Let me know, right or wrong. I want your voices heard. And as I posted, I watched the comments flood in once more, affirming that even a single wooden sign could ignite a community's courage. In the quiet that followed, I realized something profound. The lake would always ripple beneath the moon, and the dock would stand firm against storms, but it is the people united by fairness and respect who are the true guardians of place. And as long as one of us refuses to be silenced, the promise of justice remains alive.